everybody, and welcome back to another stream. It's me, Oneia! How y'all doing? Bit of a belated wave, but here you go. Alright, I am feeling much better from the last week or whatever, so that's great. I know I'm a little later than I expected to be today. I got caught up in some video editing, catching up on that. So I basically wanted to make sure I had a good amount to upload, to have to present next month. Because I mean, I've got all this free time, why not spend it video editing too? So anyway, there is that. Just a couple of housekeeping things real quick. Nothing huge major. Just letting y'all know today we're streaming till 6 Eastern. I don't really have anything that should be distracting me today. I do actually have a couple of things that I want to do as soon as I hop off, so I'm not going to be staying much longer after 6. But yeah, basically the holidays are in full swing here, and I'm trying to balance everything. It's not as easy as I thought it would want to be, but you know, you do what you can when you can, right? So anyway, let's go ahead and get to the editing. And I recall, I think I was writing this stuff in the last week of November. So we should be definitely heading into the home stretch now. So at this point, I think I knew exactly how I wanted to end the story. So this is Sylvia, April 29th, Monday. Oh, no, it wasn't the last week. It was maybe the week before that, and I was having some difficulty. Yeah, okay, never mind. I know exactly. But we are still in the home stretch-ish stuff. Anyway, Sylvia, April 29th, which is a Monday. Early that next Monday morning, Sylvia was up and dressed and was sitting at the breakfast table with a bagel that was topped with too much cream cheese. Give me 1 second, the music's loud in my ears. Don't know if it's that way for you guys, but I'm turning it down on my end. Let me know if it's loud for you guys, and I'll turn it down for you guys too. Alright. Where were we? Yeah. Early that next Monday morning, Sylvia was up and dressed and was sitting at the breakfast table with a bagel that was topped with too much cream cheese. Instead of eating the bagel, however, she was staring at the doorway to her parents' bedroom. Her mother should be coming out soon to prepare for her day of work. Sylvia really wanted to speak with her yesterday after she had come home from her class, but her mother was exhausted, apologized for not being able to focus on Sylvia at that moment, and spent the evening resting in the bedroom instead of having dinner with Sylvia and her father. I want to rework this one, I think. Sylvia had no idea what her mother was going through, but she could easily see that it was wearing her down bit by bit. She had no problems with her mother taking any necessary time to rest when she needed it. Her father seemed more concerned about behavior, but ultimately, through speaking out loud, came to terms with the fact that it was necessary for his wife's growth and that it was only temporary. We want to rework that too. When the accelerated classes ended, Sylvia's mother would have less of a workload on her shoulders, and she would be able to relax and enjoy her time at home more. As reassuring as that thought was, Sylvia still ached to talk with her mom about the thoughts she had last night after speaking with her friend. We want to revamp that. Finally, the bedroom door cracked open and Sylvia sat upright in her chair, expecting her mother to walk through. Instead, her father stepped through the doorway. Instead of his usual shorts and t-shirt, he was wearing slacks and a polo shirt. He also had a buttoned-up shirt and a jacket on a hanger in his hands. Sylvia blinked at the way her father was dressed, and her thoughts about questioning her mother about Vanessa's history all flew away. Instead, the first words that came out of her mouth were, "Did you get a job?" Her father turned around from closing the door and blinked at his daughter in surprise. Then he chuckled and shook his head. "Not yet, I'm afraid," was his response. Does this need to be here? "Then why do you look like you're about to go to get on a plane?" she asked. He normally dressed like this when he was about to drive to the airport. He often wore a polo shirt to look nice on the way there, and then, according to him, he would change the men's room so that he looked more official when he met with his coworkers to board the actual flight. "No planes in this future," he answered, but held up his fingers that were crossed. I honestly can't cross my fingers right now. I don't know if it's because I'm overweight or I'm just not dexterous anymore, but I have tried to cross my fingers several times, and like I can force them crossed, like with other fingers, but I can't like natively cross them. Can you guys cross your fingers? Anyway, where was I? I can kind of do like a hugsies type thing, but no actual crossing. Anyway, where was I? No planes in this future, he answered, but held up his fingers that were crossed. I feel like that wants to be rewarded anyway. I got a tickle in my throat. I apologize, guys. But wish me luck, okay? Sylvia tilted her head, not sure what to say. "What's going on?" she asked. "Oh, I guess I forgot to tell you," he answered a bit sheepishly. "Sorry, Sylv. After I drop you off, I'm going to be interviewing for a position at one of the downtown businesses." Sylvia blinked and grinned. "I want to rework that." "Really? That's great news," she said. "Are you still going to be a salesperson?" she asked. "Probably eat that." He nodded. "That's the plan anyway." "Good luck," she said, giving him a thumbs up. "I know you've got this." He grinned back at her. "Thanks. I sure hope it works out." I don't know if you'd say that or not. "Me too," she said. Then she looked at the doorway just behind her father and asked, "Is Mom getting ready?" Her father nodded and glanced at the doorway as well. She's not moving as fast as she normally does, but she's still waking up. "How long did you sleep last night?" Sylvia asked, surprised at the news that her mother was still waking up. I don't like... By her estimation, at this point, her mother had slept for nearly half a day. His answer was a shrug. "I think when we thought she was sleeping, she decided to study for one of the tests in her night class." I'm gonna rephrase that. Before Sylvia could ask him to elaborate, he clarified, "There were books on the bed when I went to bed." I'm probably going to have him rephrase that. Sylvia's mouth turned into a frown, but she nodded. "Gotcha." Her mother was already working hard to ensure the family remained somewhat afloat in their current situation by working as an office assistant. She knew that her mother also wanted to go back into nursing, which is why she was taking those classes. Sylvia had a feeling that her mother preferred that her father have a job before she went back to school in order to lay off some of the burden. I don't think I want that. However, it was nearly half a year since he became unemployed, and Sylvia knew that if her mother was nothing else, it was persistent. Her mother should be leaving the bedroom in a moment or two. Disjointed thought, but okay. All that's going to get reworked. In the meantime, her father had set his shirt and jacket over the arm of the couch and made his way into the kitchen to get himself something to start his day with. The trek downtown from Sylvia's school was going to be at least half an hour, so Sylvia knew that he would be getting his food and coffee in before they left that morning. Finally, the bedroom door opened again, and Sylvia's mother stepped out. She was dressed in black slacks and a sleeveless gray blouse. Beyond that, it looked like she had just rolled out of bed. Her hair seemed tame, but it looked like she had just barely run a brush through it, as it looked more like it was patted down than thoroughly brushed through. Her head, although it was normally tilted high with alert eyes, was drooping downward with eyes to match. "Can I interest you in some coffee?" Sylvia heard her dad ask from the kitchen. Her mother mumbled something in response and shambled from the bedroom door to the kitchen. "I'm sorry, what was that? I don't speak Mumbleese," her dad teased. "Give me a moment to wake up," Sylvia's mother said grumpily. "How did you sleep last night?" Once again, Sylvia's mother provided an incomprehensible utterance before clearing her throat and answering, "I couldn't get my brain to stop thinking." "You seemed pretty asleep when I joined you," he pointed out. "Maybe one of the few times," her mother replied, her voice flat and obviously lacking any energy. So this is phraseology that me and my husband use, but I want to mark it for rework just to try to make it more true to them, I guess. Also, "You seemed pretty asleep when I joined you" seemed kind of weird too. "Maybe one of the few times," her mother replied, her voice flat and obviously lacking any energy. Sylvia leaned back in her seat as she overheard the conversation in the kitchen. With her mom acting like this, she wasn't sure if she wanted to get her opinion now. Maybe after work, if she was more awake, then Sylvia could ask her then. That is, as long as she didn't have class. "Mom?" Sylvia asked from her spot at the breakfast table. "What is it, sweetie?" Her mother's voice became slightly more energetic at that moment, as she peered around the wall that divided the kitchen from the breakfast area. "Hey, Mango King, how's it going?" "What is it, sweetie?" Her mother's voice became slightly more energetic at that moment, as she peered around the wall that divided the kitchen from the breakfast area. "Do you have another class tonight?" Her mother's expression sank, but she nodded. "Yes, tonight is just a test, so I'll be able to get the test done, and come home hopefully before you two are in bed." Sylvia nodded. "Okay." "Had a productive morning. How's your stream going?" It's going pretty productive right now. Got lots of areas to rewrite so far, so that's the goal, so I'd say it's going productively too. Tonight is just a test, so I'll be able to get in, get the test done, and come home hopefully before you two are in bed. Sylvia nodded. "Okay. There was something you wanted to ask, right?" her mother asked, recalling Sylvia trying to intercept her in the night previous. She was almost tempted to lie. I wanted to find that as Sylvia. And deny that she had any questions. However, she knew that if she didn't ask when she could, she'd probably lose the sheet of paper she wrote her question on and would forget and would probably never know the answer. On the other hand, as long as she thought of Vanessa, the question probably wouldn't go away that easily. Probably. Sylvia was determined that, at least in this case, probably was not a risk she wanted to take when it came to this question. Alright, we're gonna rework that. There was, Sylvia confirmed. But I think I want to ask it when you've got some time to sit down and talk me through some questions. Her mother blinked. How much time do you need? Sylvia shrugged. I don't know. I had a couple things pop into my head last night, and I couldn't get them out of my head. I wrote it down, but I might have follow-up questions, and since it's related to medical stuff, I think you'd be the best person to turn to. Sylvia took a breath before continuing. But I know that you're super busy, and my questions might not be the easiest to answer quickly. So I think doing it when you're about to leave for work or the class isn't a good idea. Her mother frowned and nodded her head slowly as she listened to her daughter's stream of thought. I think I'm going to just reword that to explanation. And it's not something your dad can handle? It's medical related. Vanessa? Sylvia nodded. I'm gonna actually add, I don't like to add whole sentences when I'm in this phase, but it's fine. Sylvia explained again. Reminding herself that her mother was not fully awake yet. Vanessa? Sylvia nodded. Why don't you just ask her? Well, Sylvia hesitated and suddenly became interested in her now cooled bagel. We were able to sort things out last night, and I don't want her to get upset with me again. Oh yeah, I should probably have her mom, because her mom knew that they were in a tizzy or whatever. Would she be the type who would get upset at you for asking a question related to her medical situation? No, I don't think she would anyway. But I also don't want to risk it now that we're friends again. Her mother let out a very tired sigh. Sylvia wasn't sure if it was more of a yawn that she was channeling into a sigh, or if she was just sighing and it was being impacted by her sleepiness. Either way, her mother did respond. What sort of question did you have? Sylvia shifted in her seat and then asked, is it possible that Vanessa could have had cancer for more than a couple years? And this is where more research is needed. Oneia, how do you write meaningful dialogue? I'm better at describing character motivations than showing them when I write. I just use real life, honestly. So I take, the interactions that I have with my husband, with my child, that I've had with my parents, that I've overheard other people have. And that's typically how, I take my approach to dialogue. Sometimes it's terrible when I try to interpret it through like a teenager's eyes, like in this story. But sometimes you have to also take the motivations of the character into consideration. Sylvia, the main character here, doesn't want to always share what she wants to share. That doesn't make sense. She doesn't want to always share her feelings, but she also knows that sharing the feelings is usually better than not. I do explain it in oh goodness, I just lost the word. Exposition. I do sometimes explain it in exposition too, but generally speaking, I try to just have it all filled out when you have everybody talking. And usually having more, if you're just having a true dialogue, two people, it can be a little bit tougher. So having a third person interject here and there can also help flesh that out too, if you're in a setting where more than one person can join. I've been told to make every line count, definitely. So yes, that is true. You definitely want to make every line count. But that's one of the lessons I learned from doing, the National Novel Writing Month for as long as I did, is that you want to build more and then take away. So whenever I hit 500 or 50,000, it's not the end. I keep going until the story itself is done. and then from there I can move things around. And that's what I'm doing right now is, like, a lot of these lines are probably just going to get reworked, maybe even cut completely. But you have to take everything, you have to make everything big and then trim it down. Kind of like carving marble is probably a better way to explain it. Hi, number 13th, how's it going? And for Twitch viewers, I just want to let you guys know, I did get the incoming ad warning, so there will be an ad in about 4 or 5 minutes. It's only about 1 minute long, though, just a heads up. Why don't you just ask her? Well, Sylvia hesitated and suddenly became interested in her now cool bagel. We were able to sort things out last night, and I don't want her to get upset with me again. Would she be the type who would get upset at you for asking a question related to her medical situation? No, I don't think she would anyway. But I also don't want to risk it now that we're friends again. Her mother let out a very tired sigh. Sylvia wasn't sure if it was more of a yawn that she was channeling into a sigh, or if she was just sighing and it was being impacted by her sleepiness. Either way, her mother did respond. What sort of question did you have? Sylvia shifted in her seat and then asked, there we go. And then asked, is it possible that Vanessa could have had cancer for more than a couple years? Sylvia's mother blinked at her and then let out another, although shorter, sigh. You're right, she said finally. This is going to require a conversation that will take more than a few minutes. Alright, and then we're on to the next chapter. Up. Or Vanessa's POV, April 29th, Monday. And these are just temporary chapter titles. This helps me to keep track of the calendar in the story. Sunlight poured through the white curtains above her bed. Staring up the white, gauzy fabric, the young woman watched as the fabric, swayed gently as it was blown around by the air conditioning. With a yawn, she sat up in bed and raised her arms above her in a gentle stretch. Feeling the muscles of her back tighten and then release with emotion always felt good first thing in the morning. Yawning sleepily, she brushed the hair out of her face and stood out of bed. Feeling the thick shag carpet under her feet, she wiggled her toes to feel the squish of the fabric beneath her soles. It felt good to have this texture beneath her feet first thing in the morning. She realized it helped wake her up. Gingerly changing out of her nightgown and into the jeans and t-shirt she had planned to wear for the day, Vanessa mentally went over what she wanted to accomplish this Monday. First, we don't need that full sentence, I don't think. First, get dressed with as little pain as possible. Second, get to school and talk with Sylvia and catch up on all the things they had missed in the last week or so. If it meant asking Tom to give them some space, she would do it. There were classes to attend, of course, but she was confident that she was going to be okay in them. All homework had already been done, and no teachers had assigned anything new over the weekend, and likely wouldn't with exams pending. Really, the major point of the day was to reconcile directly with Sylvia. The rest was all regular routine. Grabbing a detangling brush, Vanessa watched herself as she pulled the brush through her thick, long, brunette hair. She winced each time the brush bristles made contact with any sort of knot in her strands. For most of her hair, it wasn't an issue, but the space just at the nape of her neck was always the worst. It didn't help that the knots always seemed to be almost directly next to the skin either, which made trying to brush them out that much harder. Ugh. Eventually, with much groaning and complaining, The young woman had accomplished her task of detangling her hair. Now, she needed to decide how she wanted to wear it. A ponytail was always nice because it helped keep her hair from dangling in her face as she worked, but lately she was finding that the ponytails she normally preferred to wear may be contributing to headaches that she was getting by the end of the school day. With a face, she set aside the hair tie she initially planned to use and picked up a couple of matching clips instead. Today, she'll try keeping her hair out of her face with these and see how it goes. Her eyes scanned her dresser to see if there was anything else she wanted to accessorize with today. She typically didn't wear jewelry or makeup, but she always liked to collect them just in case. In the end, she decided against most everything and did put on a rose-tinted lip gloss. Finally done with getting ready for the day, Vanessa made her way out of her bedroom, sparing a glance at a Live, Laugh, Love poster that was hanging by her door, and shook her head. Her aunt had gifted her that. Ooh, I don't like the way that's phrased. Her aunt had gifted that in an effort to lift up her mood a few years ago, when things were looking especially bad. Not that they were looking much better now, but who knew what the future held in store at any point. Shaking her head, I'm just double checking, make sure there's no, there we go. Shaking her head, she left her room and walked down the short hallway to greet her parents in the kitchen that separated the majority of the house from the bedrooms. Her dad had already been through. That doesn't even make sense to me. I don't know where I was going with that. Her dad had already been through, as evidenced by half a pot of coffee sitting on the maker. I think I understand what I was getting at here. Been through the house, but that can definitely be reworked. He often woke up early so he can make it to his office before the rest of his staff. Oh, that's right. Yeah. Definitely rework that. Her mom, however, was not yet awake, or at least out of her room, so Vanessa knew she had a couple minutes to herself in the kitchen. She looked at the various breakfast options in the pantry. Lately, her appetite had been erratic. Some days she would not want to look at even... Ugh! That's on me, not the writing. Some days she would not want to even look at food, and others she can eat an entire fridge worth of food if given the option. I think I am going to re-highlight this just so we can look at it later. Today, she wasn't sure which of the two extremes she was closest to. She knew she wanted food, but didn't have a particular desire for anything specific. In her digging, she found a box of cinnamon apple toaster pastries. Deciding she hadn't had a toaster pastry in a while, and liking the sound of apple cinnamon, she reached up and pulled the box down from the pantry and began to open it. "What's that?" came a familiar voice from the hallway. Vanessa turned her head and regard... I'm gonna mark that for rework. And regarded her mother and held up the box of toaster pastries. "Look what I found in the back of the pantry," she said. Her mother shook her head. "You know that's not good for you," she complained, walking into the kitchen with her daughter and taking the box out of her hands. Surprised that didn't pick up on spell check. "I don't even know when we got these, but it was so long ago. If they're not bad already, they must be filled with bad chemicals that'll just wreck your body." Vanessa found herself internalizing a sigh. Of course her mother would be against something filled with sugar that promised to be a sweet breakfast treat. "If they're so bad, why do we have them?" "We must have bought them when you were in remission," she explained, casually dumping the box into a trash bin. "So, because it came back, I'm not allowed to have anything sugary?" Vanessa challenged. This wasn't the first time they'd had a fight over food, but it also wasn't a fight that Vanessa was willing to back down on. Her mother's expression went from dismissive and stern to frowny. Okay. I don't know why I wrote that, but apparently I did. Your cancer came back, so if you want the best chance of surviving until you have the ability to... I think I'm gonna have to rework this. Your cancer came back, so if you want the best chance at surviving until you have the ability to do the treatment, her mother started, then the best thing to do is to make sure you only put good things into your body, she explained. Vanessa saw the look on her mother's face and frowned as well. I know why you're saying that, Mom, but the prognosis doesn't look good anyway, even if I do the treatment. I'm gonna add a comma here. You heard what the doctor said. There's still a chance, her mother cut in before Vanessa had a chance to reiterate the sentiment that she likely wouldn't live past the summer. Like, all that. Mark you for rework. As long as we take every precaution, there's still a chance. We can't take, or we're taking a big risk letting you finish school without any therapy. Please take care of your body as best as you can in the meantime. Rest, like the doctor will order. Fill your body with only fruits and vegetables. Limit the sugar and the fat, and maybe the carbs. Her brows furrowed as her voice lowered and trembled. You may be okay with what's coming around the bend, but Vanessa, I'm your mother. It's selfish, yes, but I want to keep you around as long as possible. And a Mango King, I don't know if you're still here, but like things like that, I'm proud of things like that. You know, you have the dialogue that can be contentious, but lets people know exactly where they stand, especially, you know, mother-daughter conversations. You have the fight, and you have the this is why. And hopefully the concern and the worry comes through too. Alright. You may be okay with what's coming around the bend, but Vanessa, I'm your mother. It's selfish, yes, but I want to keep you around as long as possible. It was an argument, a plea really, that her mother had used on more than one occasion, especially after the recurrence was confirmed. Every time her mother used it, Vanessa backed down. It made sense. What mother wanted to outlive their child? There were some arguments where it didn't seem to have that much weight, such as when she tried to convince her mother to let Tom drive her home instead of allowing her mother to do the honors. Her mother complained that it would take precious bonding time away from her, but then agreed to allow Vanessa to experience the time with her boyfriend. Her mother did not explicitly know that Tom was her boyfriend, but she had a feeling that she knew. I mean, that's not a terrible thing to discuss, but we want to rework that. This argument, however, was not about Vanessa spending time with people before she never got to see them again. This was about food that was going into her already failing body, and her mother's desperate attempt to prolong, or even avoid, the inevitable. Vanessa weighed the situation in her mind, and eventually she answered her mother. I like my sugar, she started, but if it will make you happy, I'll figure something else out for breakfast. A smile cracked onto her mother's face, and the older woman nodded. If you want, I can make some egg whites and toast. Vanessa blanched. I said blanched a lot in these last few chapters. Squeak! Don't mind the chair, sorry y'all. A smile cracked onto her mother's face, and if you want, I can make some egg whites and toast. Vanessa blanched at the thought of how plain the breakfast would be. Maybe some oatmeal and apple slices? I can do that, her mother agreed. Alright. Yeah, at this point we swapped POVs from Sylvia to Vanessa pretty much into the end of the story. Excuse me. So we're going to be with Vanessa for a while. Vanessa, April 29th, before school. After breakfast and after her mother dropped her off at school. I don't need to highlight that. After breakfast and after her mother had dropped her off at school, Vanessa walked over to the entryway doors and leaned against the wall as she watched the other cars of parents and students drive up to drop off the kids. As she was watching, someone tapped her on the shoulder, causing her to jump. Her stomach ached at the motion, but she ignored it, and she turned toward the offending tapper. Standing to her side was Tom, grinning, but also looking a little confused. "Hey, beautiful," he said. "Hey yourself, cutie," she said, returning his grin. "Haven't found you here in a few days," he said. "Probably change that to seen," he said, referring to the fact that when she was mad at Sylvia, she went straight to her class, instead of resting here and waiting for her friend to come back. Vanessa smiled. "Well, it could be that I'm hoping to reconcile with a friend of mine," she explained. He knew very well that Sylvia was planning on reconciling soon, but he had no idea that she had called her friend the night before. We're gonna revamp that a little bit. "Oh yeah? Then I wish you the best of luck with that," he said. He sounded authentic, and so Vanessa rewarded him with a bigger smile. "Thanks," she practically chirped, her eyes scanning once more for the vehicle that she knew her friend would be arriving. That's me, not the wording. Her eyes scanning once more for the vehicle that she knew her friend would be arriving in. "Hey, Tom?" she asked. She really didn't want to ask the next question, but knew it had to be done before Sylvia showed up. She just really didn't know if he would think it was rude or not. "Yeah," he answered, leaning on the wall next to her. She smiled at his gesture. He was so cute. She really didn't want to ask him to give her space this morning. He wasn't making the request that much easier either. I like being around you, right?" "Yeah," he said, his brows furrowing in confusion at the way she... I think furrowed is better. Furrowed in confusion at the way she was presenting her request. Hopefully he wasn't going to take it the wrong way. Vanessa took in a large breath to steel herself, and then said, "Well..." I blinked and I lost my space. Hold on. There we go. Vanessa took in a large breath to steel herself and then said, "Well, I like being around you a lot. Like, a lot." Inwardly, she winced at the unnecessary repeated phrase. It's not really necessary. We're going to highlight that for review. "But I kind of want to spend this morning with Sylvia, if you don't mind. We'll hang out later. Again, if you don't mind." He looked down for a moment, and Vanessa steeled herself. Of course. She just asked him to give her space, and although she tried to be gentle and say that they'd hang out together, he was probably thinking that she didn't want to be with him at all, which was absolutely not the case. She just needed this morning away, that was all. "I don't mind," he said, looking up at her with a half of a grin. "I kind of had a feeling that you'd want me to buzz off once you and Sylvia started talking anyway. I wasn't going to assume anything though, so I came around looking for you. And honestly, I was just about to ask if you wanted me to leave you two alone this morning." Relief washed over Vanessa, and a smile crossed her glossed lips. "That's a relief," she said before leaning over and giving him a peck on the lips. Technically, kissing wasn't allowed at school, but right now there wasn't anyone watching them, and it's not like they were making out or anything. That was reserved for when they were in his car. He eagerly returned the kiss. Technically a peck. Might review this. Just for context, but I don't have a context color, so. And then his eyes shot open and he quickly stepped away from Vanessa. "Hey, I guess it's my time to go." Vanessa turned to follow his gaze, and there was Sylvia walking closer to the two of them, looking uncertain. She gave her friend a wave before turning back to Tom and nodding. "I'll catch you between classes," she promised. Later, he winked at her, gave a nod to Sylvia, and walked into the school's main corridor that was already beginning to fill with students. "A little morning makeout routine?" Sylvia asked, watching as the young man disappeared into the crowd of students. "Nothing like that," Vanessa chuckled. The pain in her stomach flared again at the gesture. Is a chuckle a gesture or a movement? Anyway, the pain in her stomach flared again at the gesture, but Vanessa ignored it as she brushed a strand of hair over her shoulder. "I was just giving him a quick kiss goodbye." "Goodbye?" Sylvia raised an eyebrow. "For the day," Vanessa grinned and shook her head at her friend's skepticism. "We just agreed to keep the morning between you and me, and I'll see him later in the day." "Oh," Sylvia said as she realized the situation. "That was nice of him." "He said he was going to offer to do it, but I actually beat him to the suggestion." Vanessa shrugged like it was no big deal. "I think we were both thinking the same thing." Sylvia shrunk back a little as Vanessa was saying that. "You both wanted the morning to be just between you and me?" she asked. She sounded doubtful. Vanessa nodded. "Believe it or not, Tom is a pretty good guy." Sylvia sighed, adjusted her backpack, and looked again into the corridor where Vanessa's boyfriend had disappeared. "Well, I didn't know him too well before, but as I'm getting to know him through you, I guess I've got to agree. He doesn't seem like a bad egg at all." What did Sylvia say? Bad egg? Really? Review. Vanessa grinned. "I knew you didn't hate him, but I'm glad you're warming up to him, regardless of how you two started." That feels weird too. "I never hated him." Sylvia scrunched her face. "I can't say I liked him either, to be fair, but I was cautious. And yeah, I guess you could say I am warming up to him. Only because he's treating you well," she quickly added. Vanessa grinned slyly at her friend. "Well, thank you for your positive review of my boyfriend," she said before turning to indicate that she was ready to make her way toward the lockers. "Yeah, no problem. Have you told him about the thing yet?" And we need to revamp that because we're probably going to need to add stuff to this. "What thing?" Vanessa blinked, unsure what Sylvia was referring to. Sylvia tilted her head and raised an eyebrow. "You know, your thing." Vanessa's eyes went wide and she shook her head, her eyes darting down to her feet as they walked. "I don't really know how to tell him," she admitted. "You could let him know the same way you told me," Sylvia suggested. Vanessa looked up and over at her friend. "In front of a bathroom playing hooky from second period?" And I like the way I put it. "Hey, shh!" Sylvia looked around. "We don't need the teachers to hear any of that." Vanessa laughed. "That was weeks ago. And if they didn't catch us, they can't do anything about it." Maybe, Sylvia said, her tone returning to normal. But if they hear us talking about it, they might think we're delinquents and will give us an even harder time in class. That's the last thing I need right now. Vanessa shook her head and wrapped her arms around her belly as they walked. It felt like it was on fire. She knew that nothing would happen beyond the pain, and that was something she was used to. She'd ride out the day as she normally did while ignoring, or at least refusing to react to, the pain. Do you think they'd make the exams harder on you just because they think you played hooky once? Sylvia frowned at Vanessa. I'm almost positive they would. Do you think they have a copy of an exam that's 10 times harder on everyone else's... That's me reading. My reading comprehension again. Do you think they have a copy of an exam that's 10 times harder than everyone else's, and they look for opportunities just like this to pull it out? They have to, Sylvia pointed out. Have you ever been told during a test that if someone misses the test, they'll get the chance to take it, but it'll be harder to avoid cheating? Sylvia blinked and shook her head. I can honestly say that's the first time I've heard of anything like that. Sylvia whistled. Dang. I've been hearing about that since I started middle school. Vanessa shrugged. Not me, so... She tried to change the subject. Since I vetoed the whole bathroom bench confession thing, what's your next bright idea for getting me to tell him? They turned a corner down a hallway that led to Vanessa's locker. Sylvia shrugged. So, it sounds like you... Wow. So it sounds like you're set on telling him? Vanessa nodded. I've got no reason not to tell him, she explained. I need to let him make the choice on what happens after graduation. She trailed off as her eyes returned to her feet as they walked. She knew that once she told him, the students who knew about her situation would double. She felt confident that he wouldn't spill her secret. He seemed very trustworthy and reliable. What she was less than confident about, however, was that he is what he would want to do. She hinted at giving him the choice of breaking up or sticking with her after graduation, but there was also the possibility that once she speaks with him, he'd want to break up with her immediately and avoid waiting until graduation. If that ended up being the case, that would be another first for her. Her first breakup. Of course, it would be her first either way, regardless of when it happened, if it happened. I feel like for those who were with me when I wrote this out, this is obvious foreshadowing, but like I want to know, or I feel like it's a little too heavy in this regard, so that's why I'm potentially revamping it. What are you afraid of? Sylvia asked, bringing Vanessa out of her thoughts. Oh, sorry. Vanessa shook her head to clear it. Why do you think I'm afraid of something? She asked, trying to play innocent. Because, Sylvia started, you called yourself a coward in the past. And typically, well, in the time that I've known you, you generally get a certain anxious way when you're afraid that something you're not going to like is about to happen. That doesn't sound like Sylvia either. Vanessa couldn't help but give a small smile to her friend. Vanessa couldn't help but give a small smile. I don't like that particular phrasing either. Her friend really did pay attention. Yeah, she admitted. I am afraid. I don't know what he's going to say, she said, a deep breath filling her chest before she let it out in a slow sigh. Hope for the best and prepare for the worst, Sylvia said with a shrug. Where do you hear something like that? Vanessa asked. My parents, this morning. Dad's got an interview with the company today, so he mentioned that was his philosophy going into it. Or something like that. That's the vibe I got from him anyway. I don't know. We'll have to... I kind of want to cut that part out. I like it, Vanessa nodded. Might have to use it in the future. Sylvia shrugged. It seems like the kind... kind of thing you'd say, so I wouldn't be surprised. They stopped in front of Vanessa's locker, and the brunette proceeded to undo the lock and prepare herself for the first couple periods of the day. "Oh yeah?" she asked. "What else are the kinds of things I'd say?" she challenged, more curious than anything. Her eyes caught the painting in the back of the locker, and she smiled at the memory of the picnic. "You're putting me on the spot?" Sylvia asked, aghast. "Well, you made me curious," she replied, zipping up her backpack and slipping it over her shoulders. Sylvia shook her head, and the duo made their way toward Sylvia's locker, a few halls away. "I don't know anything off the top of my head," she complained. "But you'd probably say something like, I don't know, always look on the bright side of life, or something." "Always look on the bright side of life?" Vanessa quirked her eyebrow at the phrase. "I don't hate it, but I've never heard it before. It just came to mind," Sylvia shrugged. "I think I heard it in a song somewhere. Maybe I'll see if I can find a good time to use that. I haven't really had a cheering one up before, though. Certainly not with a phrase like that." "Maybe in the future," Sylvia suggested, and then winced. Maybe, Vanessa agreed. She saw Sylvia's wince, but pretended not to notice it. She knew that her condition was probably in the forefront of her friend's mind. It was certainly on the forefront of her own mind, and as much as she accepted the fact that she might not be around this time next year, her mother was correct. There was always a chance. Alright, I think this is lunch. Let's go back and edit it afterwards. "Hey, beautiful," Tom called to her as she approached him outside the cafeteria. She smiled as he greeted her by the same nickname he always did. "Hey, cutie," she returned the greeting with her nickname for him. Since they were in the middle of the busy hallway, no kissing of any sort was performed, but they did grab hands and squeezed them gently. "Salad again?" she asked. She really wanted a toaster pastry after what happened this morning, but she promised her mother that she would take better care of what went into her body. That meant, compared to the other school lunches, she would be having salad again. "Did you want something else?" Tom asked. I feel like I kind of want to mark that for review, potential rearranging. The tone of his voice seemed genuinely curious if she preferred to go to another line. She wasn't sure if he would be willing to join her in another line, since he was vegetarian, or if he was just seeing if she would be going to a different line without him today. Either way, they'd be sitting back at the usual spot with Sylvia, so whichever line they went to, it didn't matter. I'm going to highlight all of it. I think they're both going to need to be reworked. She shook her head. "No, just making sure," she explained. "Just so you know, we are going back to the usual spot today." "No more just you and I at lunch?" he asked, wiggling his eyebrows. "Sorry to break it to you, but Sylvia and I have decided that we're all going to stay together until graduation," Vanessa declared with a giant grin. "Oh, the things I do for love," he lamented dramatically. Sylvia blinked at him. Did he say love? Were they that far along in their relationship? It had only been a few weeks, hadn't it? Do people fall in love that quickly? "What is it?" he asked her, his dramatics ended. She must have been staring, and immediately blushed as his question came out of his mouth. "Nothing. She stammered and looked around, trying to find something, anything, to change the subject. Nothing came to mind. Did he admit that he was in love with her? She didn't feel the same way for him. At least she didn't think so. How would she know? Once she realized that her heart was pounding and her breathing seemed to be... once she realized that, her heart started pounding... Yeah, let's put a comma here. once she realized that, her heart was pounding and her breathing seemed to be more forced than usual. She recognized that she was panicking. Whatever you found that entire paragraph. It's a good paragraph, to be sure, but... I feel like there can be some rearranging here. And I just realized it doesn't look like my bot's attached to YouTube, so let me just double check, make sure that it actually is. And then fix it if it isn't. Yep, there is YouTube. I got disconnected. Come on, you. It's possible I've had the StreamerBot API open for so long that it just auto-disconnected or something. But there it goes. Alright. Refresh the chat. There it goes. Perfect. Sorry for that distraction. Alright, back to editing. Vanessa? Tom asked, his hand going to rest on her shoulder. Are you okay? She knew she couldn't talk right now. Vanessa closed her eyes and tried to focus on her breathing. She heard Tom call her name once more, and she forced herself to nod. She opened her eyes and stared at his face. She honestly wasn't sure if she loved him back. But if he was truly in love with her, she would need to make sure he was fully informed. We need to talk, she replied, her voice thick and heavier than she expected it to be. He blinked, confused. Talk? About what? Vanessa shook her head. I can't talk about this here. In the drive home, before you drop me off. She choked out, her voice still thick. Why not here? He asked. She shook her head again. I just can't. Vanessa, are you okay? He asked again, his voice filled with concern. She looked at him, gave him a forced smile, and a slow, deliberate nod. I am. I will be. I just had a thought and realized that I needed to talk to you about... She paused. About summer plans. He gave her a quizzical look. Plans that you don't want to talk about here, he asked. Correct, she confirmed. Gathering herself, she pulled away from his hand that was on her shoulder and pulled the door to the cafeteria open. He was a step behind her, but she could clearly hear him say, "All right, so we have a mystery on our hands," under his breath. What was that about? Who knows? And do we even need that here? We don't. She shook her head again. Her thoughts were invading too fast. She had a feeling that she was overthinking things. What Vanessa needed was just to be straightforward with what she wanted to do. She didn't plan to tell him anything today, or anytime soon. That was because she was putting it off. But, thanks to Sylvia's question earlier, Vanessa was now determined to tell him later. I'm gonna revamp that because this wasn't just Vanessa's or Sylvia's question. What she wanted to do right now, however, was get some lunch, eat it all, and make it through the rest of the day until Tom drove her home. Alright. Vanessa, April 29th. Okay. most of home the school is let out? It's not recess. After school. We'll just redeem it later anyway, so it's fine. The rest of the day passed by uneventfully. Vanessa and Tom sat with Sylvia once again during lunch. The last 4 classes of the day, Vanessa dutifully took color-coded notes and made sure that her economics notes were legible so Sylvia could make a copy of them later. Finally, the time had come. Waving goodbye to Sylvia, Vanessa and Tom turned down a corridor that led them to the senior parking lot. Only seniors had the privilege of getting a parking spot close to the school. Juniors and other grades could apply for any remaining spots, but it was first come, first serve. Anyone who didn't have a registered spot by the time the school year started was put on a reservation list, regardless of what grade they were in. Tom's spot wasn't too close to the school, but it wasn't out in the back of the parking lot either. From Vanessa's locker, though, it was a good at least 5 minutes of walking before they got to a small car. Normally, it was a pleasant walk, with the two of them making small talk and exchanging pleasantries as they made their way to the car. Today, however, was different. Maybe it was because Vanessa had already expressed her desire to talk to him about something serious, but after the duo parted ways with Sylvia, they did not speak for the majority of the walk to the car. How was the rest of your day? Vanessa asked after a while, not being able to bear the awkward silence much more. I'll change that to much longer. This is a question that would have been asked long before the pair had left the school, but today they were almost at the car before she had asked. What did Google think we should say here? Nope, at the car is perfect. The question was like a weight had lifted off the pair. The awkward silence was gone, and Tom's shoulders seemed to relax. He smiled and shrugged. Same old, he replied. Just boring lectures and notes. Someone in my physics class got the teachers to agree to let us bring an index card. It's kind of important there. Bring us... Okay, I tripped myself up. Someone in my physics class got the teachers to agree to let us bring in an index card full of notes or formulas, or whatever we decide to use it for. Oh, that's neat, Vanessa replied. I wish I could get my teachers to give us some sort of cheat sheet like that, even if it's an index card. Has anyone asked? Vanessa considered the question for a moment and shook her head. I don't think so. Maybe if you ask, they'll let you, he explained. What's the worst that could happen? Nothing changed, but if you ask, then you'll not only be able to have a cheat sheet. I think I need to rephrase that to pivot it to include the if you ask and they agree. Alright, but if you ask and they agree, then you'll not only be able to have a cheat sheet, but you'll be the hero of your class. But, or what if I don't want to be the class hero? Vanessa asked, her eyes going downward. Why not? Tom asked. I don't know, Vanessa shrugged and hugged her arms across her belly. I guess I just don't want the attention. I mean, it's not like they'll actually throw a party in your honor, Tom pointed out. True, Vanessa agreed, and then chuckled. Could you imagine someone giving a party just because they talked the teacher into allowing a cheat sheet? Honestly, for some of the classes, I can see it, Tom admitted. There are some really rough classes out there. Physics is just one of them. Are you serious? Vanessa asked, blinking. Well, maybe not a full party. Maybe someone would bring you a cake or something from the cafeteria instead, he conceded. Maybe, Vanessa nodded, slowing down as they got to his car. Wordlessly, the two split for a brief moment as Vanessa walked to the passenger door and Tom went to the driver's side door. She waited for the passenger door she waited by the passenger door for him to unlock it, and once it was unlocked, she opened the door, set her backpack on the ground, and slipped into the car before buckling her seatbelt. Tom had done much of the same when he entered, although his backpack ended up in the back seat of the car. By the time Vanessa was done getting herself situated in her seat, he had already buckled himself in and was getting the keys into the ignition. Before he started the car, however, he leaned back and looked at Vanessa. Her eyes went wide. Was he going to refuse to take her home until they had the discussion she wanted? Couldn't he have waited until they were at least in front of her house before he insisted on talking? Vanessa told herself to calm down. She was just assuming what he was going to say. Yes, the discussion was probably the most likely topic, but there could be any number of topics that were preventing him from starting his vehicle. What is it? She asked, almost breathlessly. What are your plans over summer? He asked, almost demanding the answer. Damn, Vanessa thought to herself. Not only was he wanting to have the discussion now, but he was serious about getting that information. She couldn't put it off anymore. She looked down at her hands, trying to formulate what she was going to say to him. Ever since she decided to tell him, she should have been coming up with what she was going to say all along. I'm going to rephrase that. Don't hate it, but it could be finessed. However, she never did. She never wanted to. It was easier to hope the conversation would never happen in the end than to plan for it. But here they were, and she was unprepared. Vanessa? He asked, getting her attention. She looked up at him and frowned. I'm sorry, she said. I should have told you sooner, but I was too afraid. Tom squinted his eyes in confusion. What? He asked. Told me what? What are you afraid of? Vanessa swallowed. She really wanted to tear her eyes away from his face, but at the same time she could not look away from his earnest expression. I'm afraid of... She stopped. What was she afraid of? She knew she wasn't afraid of dying. She had made peace with that a long time ago. She knew exactly what... She knew exactly what she was afraid of, as odd as it was. So we're gonna highlight both of these because they're literally ruining its own continuity within the same paragraph. It was what made... Okay. She knew exactly what she was afraid of, as odd as it was. It was what made her and Sylvia initially end their friendship earlier in the year. I'm terrified that if we get closer, I'm just going to hurt you. Tom's confusion was not abated by that phrase. We're going to take the $10 word and we're going to just revamp it to like a $5 word. Why? I'm dying, she finally blurted out. Those words finally caused the young man's face to react. His head jerked back as if he was slapped, as if he were slapped by them. Dying? He asked. His eyes looked her up and down. You seem fine. Is this some sort of cult thing? Cult? Vanessa asked. This time, she was the one squinting her eyes in disbelief. However, after a moment, she shook her head. No, she finally stated. I am dying. I have been dying for a while now. But you look fine to me. You and everyone else who doesn't get a peek of my insides, she pointed out. I hide any pain that I feel. I'm going to rephrase that. That's why you're on bed rest so much? Vanessa held up her hand and swayed it in a back and forth motion. Sort of, she admitted. I was doing fine taking care of myself up until I was put in the hospital. Then, after that, the doctors ordered me to stay in bed when I'm not in school to reduce the stress on my body. How long have you been dealing with this? He asked. Vanessa looked down at her hands. The cancer? A couple years now. It went away. I actually want to probably do a little bit more research on this again. couple years now. It went away, but now it's come back. She should be used to explaining this, after she had already discussed this with Sylvia, but no. Maybe she would never get used to explaining it. Hopefully, though, this would need to be the last one. She set to time. She continued, "It's more aggressive this time. The doctors aren't giving me a good survival rate." Tom was silent for a moment. "So your plans for the summer, after graduation, are to start the treatment. I'll essentially be no contact for long periods of time," she explained. "Even if I wasn't in the middle of some sort of treatment, I'd probably have no energy to even talk on the phone." She swallowed. "So, I'm giving you the choice. After graduation, do you still want to be my boyfriend, even though I might not even survive? Or do you want to break up after we graduate so you won't have to see me go through all of that?" Tom leaned back in his seat and crossed his arms over his chest and thought. Vanessa wanted to say his name and get him to answer, but she knew better than that. He was thinking about the options she provided to him. Eventually, he looked back over at her. "Why aren't you getting treatment now?" he asked. Vanessa looked down at her hands again. This time, she wasn't trying to figure out what to say. She just didn't want to see his reaction to her words. "Because I wanted to graduate like everyone else. I didn't want people to know that I'm going to die and give me some sort of special treatment because of it." "Vanessa, how do you think I feel now that I know?" he asked. She looked up at him. "Please don't treat me any differently," she pleaded softly. Sharply. "The toothpaste is out of the tube," he explained. "There's no way that I'm going to be able to treat you like anything else now that I know that you're not only ill, but you're refusing to take care of yourself because you're too stubborn and don't want people to see you be weak." "That's not it," Vanessa tried to explain. "No?" Tom asked. "Then why don't you want people to know?" "Because people will treat me differently. Whether or not they see me as weak is one thing, but I don't want any special treatment just because I'm ill," she tried explaining. She wasn't sure if she was getting her feelings across well, though. She was feeling flustered, and she was certain that her emotions were clouding her ability to explain her reasoning. "I just wanted to be a normal kid like everyone else." Alright, I like these lines, I just need to finesse them too. "No one's normal," Tom explained, shaking his head. Vanessa leaned back in her seat and nodded. "I know, but I don't want to be known as the girl who graduated while knowing she was going to die." "Let me ask this," Tom started. "If you had started your treatment when you found out that it came back, would the survival rate have been better?" Vanessa tried thinking back to her doctor's appointment earlier in the year. When the doctor told her they had found more nodules, her head had begun swimming. Oh, jeez. She only remembered bits and pieces of what was told to her during that appointment, and most of it was thanks to her parents reminding her of much of that conversation. Either way, though, the survival rate wasn't impressive. Maybe it was slightly higher than if she had opted not to do any treatment until after graduation. She knew herself well enough to know that if survivability was almost guaranteed had she undergone the treatment right away, then many of these conversations she'd had recently would not have even happened at all. Treatment before graduation or treatment after graduation, both would have a low survivability rate. "It would not have been," Vanessa finally answered. "Maybe slightly higher, but the chances were, I'm going to say, very low." Very low, either way. Tom sighed loudly. The next thing Vanessa heard was the ignition turning over. "I'll drive you home," he said, his voice devoid of any amusement or even interest. After that, you'll need to get your parents to start driving you home again. Vanessa blinked and looked back at him. What? She said breathlessly. Was her worst fear going to happen after all? He gulped and proceeded to back out of the parking spot. He remained silent for several moments until the car was pulling out into the road that would take them to the highway and toward Vanessa's home. He finally answered and said, I know we weren't super romantic or anything like that, he started. But I feel like something like that is huge. When I asked you to prom, you said something about not wanting a boyfriend. But then the next week you and I became pretty close despite that. And you still said nothing. Vanessa bit her lip, unable to say anything. She couldn't find any words that would change his mind. I think you're beautiful, he continued. I think you're overall pretty smart and fun to be around, for the most part. But keeping something like that to yourself is probably the most selfish, cowardly thing I've heard anyone ever do. Silence followed his lecture for several moments. For a few moments before he continued, almost as if he had thought of something else to say. You know, I don't know exactly what I would have done if you had told me right away. But I wouldn't have been as mad or hurt. Maybe I would have stuck through things with you to see where it went. Maybe I would have opted not to pursue anything with you. It's too late now to tell. But right now, Vanessa, I'm very mad. And not just because you didn't tell me, but because you think that graduating with everyone else is more important than your own health. Maybe that doesn't make me mad, actually. That makes me upset that you're just not valuing yourself more than your own experiences. And that makes it seem like you're just a stubborn girl who pretends to be smart, but isn't actually aware of any real-world consequences of your choices. He fumed for a couple more moments. And what makes me mad about that isn't your inability to see your consequences, but your deceit in making me think you're brave and smart and kind when you're really just a coward who's stupidly trying to pull the wool over everyone's eyes so you can look good at the end of it all. Vanessa said nothing through his speech. He was right. She was a coward. Anyone who truly valued their own life would have gone through the treatment. Anyone who valued their friends would have let them know as soon as they had become friends. Almost no one in the school was aware of Vanessa's situation. She wanted it to be that way. I'm actually going to highlight this for a review. I don't know if I will edit it, but because I think it turned out pretty well. But I just want to make sure that it does actually flow well with more attention. Anyway, anyone who valued their friends would have let them know as soon as they had become friends. Almost no one in the school was aware of Vanessa's situation. She wanted it to be that way. Even after Tom's admonishment, she didn't want that to change. He was right about everything. Still, she wouldn't change a thing. You're right, she said softly. I'm a vile coward. I've been trying to push people away so I don't have to tell them. But at the same time, I'm pretending I'm something I'm not so people don't end up actually worrying about me. It's a terrible thing to be. I understand you're upset and that you don't want to be with me anymore. The car, or actually just change it to couple, remained silent for another couple of minutes. Finally, Tom stopped in front of Vanessa's home. No, stop the car in front of Vanessa's home. Wordlessly, she gathered her things and unbuckled. Hand on the door latch, she paused and looked at him. Can I ask you something? What? He asked coolly. Could you please keep this between us? She asked. He looked over at her. I'm not happy with how you went about doing all of this. But I respect you, and I won't let people know about your secret, as dumb as it is. Thank you, Vanessa said, starting to take her leave of the car. What about Sylvia? Tom asked. Vanessa paused, her foot hovering just above the ground. She pulled it back in and turned back around to face him. She sighed and admitted, Sylvia knows. She had to pull it out of me. Tom regarded her for a long moment before settling back in his seat, his eyes straight on the road ahead. Goodbye, Vanessa. Dun dun dun. I'm going to note here, add commentary on Vanessa crying. She would not be stoic through all of this. I don't think she would be anyway. Oh, Twitch viewers, just a heads up, there is an ad coming in the next 4 or 5 minutes. Just got the warning from Twitch. Alright. Okay. This is sometime in May. Yeah, we have like a couple chapters left, guys. Wow. Okay, stretchy stretch. Vanessa? Sylvia's voice brought the brunette back to reality. She was sitting in the women's locker room of the football stadium. Excuse me, sorry. Moments ago, she had been hunched over, almost blacking out as her stomach felt like it was tying itself into knots. The world had faded around her, and only just now was Sylvia's voice able to drag her back to reality. Yeah? The young woman replied, shaking her head clear. You okay? You look like you were in pain there. Aware of the few stares being cast their way by the other senior woman in the same locker room, Vanessa shook her head again and zipped up the green graduation robe. I'm fine, she insisted as she stood up and untucked her hair from the robe. Vanessa was only partially telling the truth. She was usually pretty good at hiding her stomach pains, but lately her pain had started getting worse than last week. Her mother surmised that exams and the stress of graduation were the main culprits, and promised her daughter that once those stressors were gone, she would be feeling somewhat better until the treatments began. Of course, her mother neglected to mention how rough some of those treatments can be, but then maybe she just focused on the period between graduation and the treatments. I would actually pull up my calendar to see when that would be. May. We're looking at April 29th was a Monday. So the 6th would be the Monday after that. The 29th was the prepare for exam week, 6th is exam week, and then so the 11th, May 11th, would be graduation day for them. Alright, so where was I? Alright, of course, her mother neglected to mention how rough some of those treatments could be, but then maybe she just focused on the period between graduation and the treatments. She wasn't about to tell Sylvia that, though, especially not in front of the other girls. For all they knew, she was probably just having feminine troubles at a very inopportune time. Exhaling and shaking her arms and hands as she turned, exhaling and shaking her arms and hands out as she turned and looked at Sylvia. Hands out. Commas are very handy. She turned and looked at Sylvia. How do I look? It also seems very disjointed. I'm just going to highlight that entire paragraph. Sylvia looked her friend up and down and gave her a thumbs up. You look good. How do I look? The girl spun in place, her short hair flaring a bit as she made the motion. You look good too, Vanessa confirmed with a smile. Great. We're just a bunch of good-looking chicks about to look good in front of a full-on football field of other students, parents, and family. Nothing to be nervous about, Sylvia said, her grin showing exactly how nervous she was. We've practiced this, Vanessa assured her. You'll be fine. But what about... Sylvia looked at her right hand. It had healed significantly in the last couple weeks, enough that she could hold objects in it now. It didn't seem to be enough for her. I don't like that. If you think you'll drop it, use your other hand, Vanessa suggested. That's a good idea, Sylvia acknowledged. Hey! A random girl that Vanessa recognized as being in their economics class walked up to them, her eyes focused only on Sylvia. Congratulations on graduating, even if you do sleep in class. I told you, I don't sleep in class, Sylvia replied with an unamused tone. Sure you don't. But hey, it seems like you absorbed enough information in your sleep to pass anyway, the buxom blonde shrugged. Congrats! Why are you here? Sylvia asked, clearly getting irritated with the other girl. We're planning on going to Adele's after this for a celebratory lunch, the other girl stated. I almost didn't want to invite you or your creepy friend, but I figured, hey, you're graduating too, so why not? Sorry for being late? Don't be sorry for being late. Just say hi. There is no late here. I'm always late. So you're good. I'll be on for another hour or so you got plenty of time. Oh no! I hate being sick too. I hope you feel better soon. My recommendation for a sore throat is plenty of tea. But sip it, don't chug it. Because it's going to be hot tea. You want hot tea to help soothe the throat. Alright, so back to where I was. I almost didn't want to invite you, or your creepy friend, but I figured, hey, you're graduating too, so why not? Sorry. Vanessa cut in, her words sharp. Who the heck was calling her creepy? I was going to highlight that. She wanted to know, but had a feeling the word wasn't actually being said out of whoever this girl and her friends were. We have plans. The girl turned her attention to Vanessa, looked her up and down, and scoffed. Honestly, I didn't expect you to be gay. She spat the last word out as if it were poison. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. So many options went through her mind at that point. She could have pointed out that she wasn't. She could have grabbed Sylvia and kissed her. She could have said something similar to however this girl was. That doesn't make sense. Instead, she decided to tone down her reaction. She didn't want to get in trouble on the very last day of school, after all. I'm not saying if I am or not. She wasn't about to give the girl the satisfaction of knowing. But you certainly wouldn't be on anyone's list regardless. Excuse? The other girl started to respond. Vanessa continued. And even if you were on someone's list, how sure are we that you didn't either pay them off with goods and services to even get on that list? How many people actually stick around you? Or are you the one that moves on because you just can't find anyone that satisfies you? I also don't think that's a great dig. Funny, coming from someone who doesn't even have a beau. Wasn't she dating Tommy? One girl who had been overhearing the conversation asked. Yeah, but he broke up with her, another girl answered. Why? Vanessa overheard these girls talking, and as much as she wanted to get the tea, she was focused on the blonde who had tried to insult her and Sylvia. That's by choice, Vanessa answered the blonde. I had a boyfriend. It ended less than amicably, but other than him, I didn't want anyone else. I'm going to also highlight that so I can address the fact that she's kind of also answering the gossipers as well. The blonde scoffed again. You suck at insults. Vanessa shrugged. Sorry, I don't hang around people that make me want to use them often. The other young woman glowered for a moment, and then huffed and turned around and stalked back toward her friends on the other side of the locker room. She was muttering something about the last time she was ever going to be friendly to anyone again. You know, Sylvia finally spoke up. She could have just been trying to be nice. Vanessa swung her head, then her body toward... That feels violent. Swung her head, then her body toward her friend. Sylvia, if she wanted to extend an olive branch, don't you think doing it on the very last day of school is kind of a weak gesture? Plus, I'm pretty sure she said everyone's going to Adele's. That's the place near the school, right? It won't even fit a quarter of the girls in here. She looked over her shoulder again at the other teenager and her group of friends who seemed to be trying to cheer her up. I'm gonna highlight that for editing too. I bet if we swing by after the ceremony, no one from that group will be there at all. Sylvia gave it a moment to think, and then nodded. I hate to admit it, especially since I was kind of hoping she'd apologize at some point. But you're right. Anyway, I wasn't lying, Vanessa said, sitting back down on the bench to rest as they waited for a teacher to come and get them. About what? We have plans for afterwards. Oh yeah! The girls continued to mill about in the locker room until mark that for potential formatting. The girls continued to mill about in the locker room until the female coach stepped in. The female coach has a name, I just forgot what I gave it. I kind of abandoned the character list early on. Maybe I put it here somewhere. Nope. Yeah, I did terrible documenting the teachers. Oh yeah, it's a Saturday. The girls continued to mill about in the locker room until the female coach stepped in. Alright girls, are you all ready? Yes ma'am, came a chorus of responses. The coach led the girls from the locker room toward a hallway where the senior boys were already standing in line and waiting. One of the coaches stepped forward and barked. When I call your name, get in line, starting here. Starting here. He pointed toward the corner of the hallway intersection, and then proceeded to call the names of every student in the graduating class in alphabetical order. It took nearly 10 minutes for the full roster to be appropriately lined up, but finally all of the students were properly in their positions. Okay. These aren't the same word, but I feel like they're close enough that I'm going to mark them as redundant. Once everyone was in place, the coaches began to lead the students out toward the field where a speech was already started by the school's dean. The eruption of applause prompted the dean to pause what she was saying in order to allow... Oh, wait. I feel like it was a he during the bomb threat. The eruption of applause prompted the dean to pause what he or she was saying in order to allow the students to be acknowledged and seated. Once the applause finally died down, she continued with her speech, telling the gathered crowds how proud she was of this year's students, how they will continue to be innovators, and that she has no doubt that once they make their way out into the world, they will do great things. The following speeches were from the valedictorian and the role that's just under valedictorian. That was something that I left there specifically for research. And because we were at the end of the story-ish, I don't think I was worried about word fluff at that point. Vanessa could not really follow what they were saying, but was certain that it was more grandstanding of how great the senior class was. Excuse me. Need some water. But was certain that it was more grandstanding of how great the senior class was, memories that were made throughout the year, and excitement and words of wisdom to come ahead. Instead of trying to listen to speeches, she had her eyes closed and her hands pressing tight into her stomach. Her stomach was in such pain. Was in such pain, it felt like someone was taking her insides and stretching them, balling them up, and repeating the process over and over again. All the while, the innards were on fire. All the while, the innards were on fire. I'm gonna mark that for a revamp anyway. You okay? Came a whispered voice next to her. She didn't even know who she was sitting next to. Looking over, she saw a girl with whom she never had any classes. Her red hair was braided, and she was looking at Vanessa with a concerned expression. Faking a smile, Vanessa nodded. Just very nervous, she lied. Well, maybe it wasn't a lie. She had no idea if this pain was going to go away before she could walk, or if she could fake her way through it enough to walk up to get her diploma. Finally, the microphone was returned at some point to the dean, who said, "I will now call the students to come and get your diploma. I ask that all parents please hold on to your applause until all names have been called so that everyone can hear their names. Once you get your diploma, please stand with Vice Dean Leroy for a picture, and then cross the field to sit in the gilded section that symbolizes the golden knowledge that you will all carry forward." Vanessa looked across the field toward the other section. They had all practiced this yesterday, but at the time the section was not yet decorated. Today it had a golden banner that read, "Congratulations, graduates," in black letters that hung from the front of the section, and golden streamers and tinsel decorated the seats like garland. It was gaudy, but she appreciated the whimsical gesture. A smile crossed her face, and for a moment she forgot about the pain in her abdomen. Alright. Oh. Vanessa, May 11th, afternoon. I can't believe you talked me into this. Or worse, I got excited for it, Sylvia complained at Vanessa, or as Vanessa laughed and started to get another hook set up. The two girls, along with their parents, were at the park fishing at a designated fishing pond. Shortly after her breakup with Tom, Vanessa realized that she wanted a lot of things to revamp that. She wanted to do a lot of things to keep her mind off of exactly how much she was hurting people by not telling them. It was too late now to tell anyone. Depending on how well they thought they knew her, they'd be upset like Tom was, or just indifferent. I think I'm going to highlight most of this. So at least in Vanessa's mind, telling people about her illness was just not something that was going to happen. At least Tom never shared her secret, and she was thankful for him for that. In her efforts to keep busy, she realized that if she was going to be bedridden, she'd have to figure something out that would really stimulate her. A bucket list was eventually created from her imaginings, and it included all sorts of activities that she had never done in her 18 years of living. I guess at this point she could be 18. Weren't too strenuous for her to attempt to perform even with... let's try that again. A bucket list was eventually created from her imaginings, and it included all sorts of activities that she had never done in her 18 years of living. I'm going to just highlight that for and it included all sorts of activities that she had never done in her 18 years of living and weren't too strenuous for her to attempt to perform even with her reduced energy levels. Okay, I'm just going to revamp the entire thing. It's just like a run-on sentence at that point. She wanted to get as much done before she began treatment, which would be in 2 days. Fishing was one of them. I'm also going to revamp that because it kind of jumps from recollection to current. Her parents were initially against the idea of doing anything between graduation and the following Monday, but Vanessa begged and promised that the activities weren't anything stressful, and that if she was feeling under the weather while performing those activities, she could easily sit down and enjoy the company of others in the meantime. After those promises, and seeing the list of activities, which not only included fishing, but scrapbooking, frisbee golf, and baking a cake, her parents agreed, but only on the condition that at least one of them was present whenever the activities took place. I'm gonna revamp this, I think. Anyway. Because it's like, it feels like the bucket list is supposed to be done before treatment, but it's only been like 2 weeks, so. Like this, I think. Here, we can revamp that. Today, Vanessa took full advantage of the fact that everyone was off for graduation to have both her and Sylvia's families come together for her desired fishing bucket item. They were gathered at the park with new fishing poles, wires, and bait in hand, and Vanessa's mother provided They were gathered at the park with new fishing poles, wires, and bait in hand, and Vanessa's mother provided a picnic lunch for everyone to enjoy at their leisure. Sandwiches, chips, potato salad, and cut carrots and celery. Vanessa looked around at the gathering. Her parents and Sylvia's parents were seated at a bench chatting away. Sylvia's father apparently used to fish a lot when he was younger, so he taught the girls how to set up their lines and try to catch some fish from the pond. Now that they were ready to fish without his direction, he had gone back to the other adults and had joined the conversation. Meanwhile, Sylvia was struggling with getting her hook on the line without hurting herself further. Apparently, her hand had healed well enough to allow her to make fine hand movements, such as tying a fishing line knot, but she was still having trouble threading the clear line through itself and the hook. I'm gonna mark that for revamp. Do you want me to do that for you? Vanessa offered. No, I've got it, Sylvia insisted, her focus entirely on getting the thin, clear thread through the fishing line hook and back around on itself. Okay, Vanessa said quietly, watching as her friend continued to struggle with the wire. She was tempted to put out another cast, but decided she'd wait for Sylvia. It'd be no fun if she was the only one doing all the fishing. That's your sister? Vanessa suddenly heard Sylvia's mother exclaim. That caused both Sylvia and Vanessa to direct their attention toward the picnic table, where the adults were sitting. Vanessa hadn't heard any of the previous conversation, but now she was hearing snippets like office and doctor. From what she could understand, they were talking about her aunt, who was a family practitioner. Aside from her father, Vanessa had more family in the medical field than she could count, her aunt being one of them. Only a few resided in this city, though. Does your mother know Dr. Barton? Vanessa asked Sylvia. Yeah, she works at his office, Sylvia answered, looking back toward Vanessa, then down to her fishing wire. Why? Is that your uncle? Vanessa laughed softly and shook her head. Not quite. Dr. Barton is my aunt. My uncle, her husband, does the office billing. Wait, Sylvia looked back up again. Dr. Barton's been a female doctor all this time? Vanessa laughed again and nodded. Yeah, did your mother never say? No, I just assumed, I guess. Sylvia looked back toward the table, and Vanessa followed her gaze. The adults were now laughing, probably at the realization that the families had more in common than just their daughters. Vanessa smiled at the scene, and then turned around and faced the pond, and set her fishing pole down, sitting on the damp shore beside it. Ugh, that was a pain. Gotta revamp that one. What are you doing? Sylvia asked Vanessa, the wire and hook now in separate hands, though it looked like the wire had seen better days. My grammar is so bad, even Google doesn't know what to do with it. Enjoying the moment, Vanessa said, eyes just watching the gentle roll of the tiny waves generated by the wind as they rolled across the top of the lake, casting small reflections of the sun as they went along. That one's kind of long too, but I like it. It wasn't the first time she felt it, but a knot was beginning to form in her stomach. I think I'm going to revamp that because, this is the same day that she was having those stomach pains during graduation. We haven't even addressed that. Not a pain like she was used to, but this one was much more emotionally tied. She had originally agreed with her parents a long time ago that if something were to happen and this would be terminal, that it was going to be best for everyone if she had just refrained from letting anyone get too close to her. At the time, she thought it was just to protect people around her from heartache. Now, however, she was realizing that part of it, at least probably from her parents' perspective, was to protect her as well. She had made peace with everything. She was ready for anything to happen. Or so she thought. I can't tell whose chapter this is. Okay, so I think we're back to Sylvia now. This is a couple weeks since graduation. So 14, so that's 25. Yeah, we'll just go with that. May 25th. Sunday. And I'll adjust it as necessary. Hello? Came the tired voice on the other end of the phone. Hey, you said you could talk? Sylvia asked gently, but hopefully. Yeah, for a few minutes, Vanessa answered. It had been a couple of weeks since graduation. Vanessa finally started the treatments, and because they were aggressive to compensate for the time she refused the treatments, it's not technically wrong. We're gonna see if we can rephrase that though. They left her more tired than Sylvia had previously seen her be. I'm gonna just... You all get massaged. Even in this short exchange, the blonde was surprised by how little energy her friend seemed to have. Okay, a few minutes, Sylvia acknowledged. Then she let out a breath. Vanessa's last couple of weeks were busy, but Sylvia hadn't been much of a slacker either. Vanessa was aware of what she had been doing, but the results of the actions were just now bearing fruit, and she wanted to share that directly, or as close to directly as she could get, with her friend. Since she couldn't see her in person for a while, that meant calling her. Telling her in text or email just did not seem right. We're gonna rework that. Actually, I'm gonna expand on this too. So, Sylvia began, you know how I was wondering and stressing about what I was going to do after high school? Yeah, Vanessa weakly replied. I've got good news, Sylvia smiled. She wanted to know how excited she was, but was afraid that if she had been too excited on the phone, Vanessa would also get excited and would tire out much faster than she normally otherwise would. There's gotta be a more concise way to say that. You got a job? Vanessa guessed without prompting. Even better. Vanessa took a moment to answer, then guessed. You got a job where you can paint? Sylvia winced. Not quite, she honestly answered, but it's almost as exciting. What's the news? Vanessa asked. She was no longer guessing, but it wasn't because she wasn't interested. She had very little steam left to give. That was evident in the way she was speaking. I did get a job, Sylvia confirmed. It has nothing to do with painting, but I also got a letter from the college today. Letter? Probably more like an email. You got in? Vanessa interrupted her, her voice raised slightly in excitement. Sylvia winced again. Yeah, she confirmed. Relax, though. Don't want you passing out while we're talking. It's fine. Vanessa tried to reassure her friend. I just woke up not long ago. I shouldn't be passing out. Sylvia didn't point out that she sounded like she was going to fall asleep at any moment, but she wasn't aware of her friend's sleeping schedule habits or how generally she was lately. All she knew was that she seemed perpetually exhausted, and her voice was usually an indicator of how much further she could push herself to talk. Okay, Sylvia conceded before resuming the conversation. But yeah, I did get accepted into the fall semester. I'll highlight that because I'm pretty sure a few chapters ago I said that it had been closed, so that's something I need to reconcile. That's great! Vanessa exclaimed in her almost breathless voice. There's another bit of good news, Sylvia continued. Oh? Vanessa asked, her wariness starting to come back to her voice. Much more of this, and I may pass out after all, she joked. You did say you had a couple minutes, Sylvia pointed out, so I'm trying to get it all in at once, before you do. And then, nope. Trying to be efficient? Are you the Sylvia I know? Are you an alien? Sylvia laughed at her friend's attempts to joke. You've got jokes now. I can be tired and funny at the same time, Vanessa said. Sylvia heard some shuffling and imagined Vanessa was adjusting herself in bed on the other end. She really shouldn't stay on much longer, but ultimately that would be Vanessa's choice. So, what is the other good news? So, it's kind of pending good news, Sylvia explained. My job, she realized she didn't say where she was working yet, so she threw it in quickly, at the fried chicken place, is technically going to be helping with the cost of school. Like, that's where my paycheck's going. They're not subsidizing me or anything, Sylvia explained. I'll highlight that. That's probably my hint to throw in the chicken place earlier in the conversation. Uh-huh. Vanessa verbalized to indicate she was still listening. But my dad said that if I can save up enough to get half of the down payment on a booth, he'd get me the other half and I can set up a booth for this year's fall festival in the downtown area. A booth? Vanessa asked. To sell your paintings? I'm gonna revamp that. That could be downtown area of the current city, of the city where he's working at, yada yada yada. A booth? Vanessa asked. To sell your paintings? Yeah. My parents and I talked about it and did some research. I don't need a license or anything if it's under a certain threshold per year, and even if I sold everything this year at expensive prices, I wouldn't be penalized for the first year. But starting next year, I need to hold a license or I'd get fined. Sylvia, Vanessa cut in. Oh, sorry. Sylvia winced yet again, realizing that she was going more in depth with the situation than she needed to. The details are important, but not to Vanessa, who is clearly having trouble following along. So, you got a job that's helping pay for school, but also, if you can save enough, you're going to showcase your art at the festival? Vanessa asked, trying to make sure that she got all of the information. Sylvia was trying to share. That feels like it's kind of meta there, so. Exactly, Sylvia confirmed. That's great, Vanessa complimented. I'm so happy that you were able to get all that. Sylvia smiled and nodded at the compliment. Me too. There was a moment of silence on the line, then Vanessa said, I'm hitting my limit. I should probably go now. Yeah. There was another moment of silence before the girls wrapped up the call and Sylvia hung up the line on her end. She sat back against the couch and just looked at the phone for a few moments longer, memorizing her friend's profile picture. Vanessa was wearing a t-shirt that said, Call me Princess Sassy Pants, with the imagery of a princess cap and rhinestone pants. In the picture, she also had one eye shut and was sticking out her tongue. The image always made Sylvia chuckle, even in somber moments like this. It was a reminder that Vanessa, whatever she was going through, was not someone who would lay down and be sad for sadness' sake. She was going to kick butt and do it in her own style. I like the sentiment, and I don't want to erase this, but I think it kind of conflicts with the whole breakup with Tom thing, so, yeah. That made Sylvia much more hopeful than she was originally about the end of the summer, when Vanessa's treatments were supposed to wrap up. Vanessa said she was comfortable with dying, but Sylvia knew better. That girl was not going to just lay down and take it. Sylvia was sure that every treatment Vanessa went to, she'd be trying to make the nurses laugh, or would be spouting some sort of teenage wisdom, even if it was ill-advised. A smile came to Sylvia's lips, and she turned off her phone, setting it into her pocket. You're in a good mood, her mother observed, walking into the house after work. She set her bag on the dining room table and helped herself to the seat next to Sylvia. What's going on? You know everything that's going on, Sylvia explained. Excited for your first job? Her mother guessed. Yeah, and college. And maybe doing the festival. And I'm excited for Vanessa, Sylvia shrugged, not entirely sure why she said that last part. Vanessa? Why? Did something happen? No, Sylvia admitted. But I think she's going to do just fine. Her mother smiled. You do? Yeah. I don't think that it's right to call her a fighter, but I also don't think that as much as she said she's okay with just letting things happen, she's just going to let things happen. I think she's aiming to survive, whether or not she knows it. I'm going to highlight that for massage. Her mother tilted her head in uncertainty. What do you mean? I mean, it's Vanessa, Sylvia shrugged. She's going to do things her own way, and I think that even if it was her parents making her do these treatments, she would have been different if she was determined to just... Sylvia shook her head as she tried to find the words. Not survive. Vanessa is Vanessa, though. I think she's going to survive, even if she doesn't have to fight her way through it. Again, that's kind of weird. I'm not entirely sure I follow, her mother admitted. Me too, Mrs. Mulligan, me too. But you're right, your friend is pretty unique in how she does things. I don't think there are any worries for her. Sylvia nodded, reaching down to pat her pocket and the phone that she had just spoken to Vanessa on. There were concerns with her friend, sure, but they were only temporary. She knew that in the long run, Vanessa would be fine. Can someone help me? Her father's voice called from the door that led to the garage. Both Sylvia and her mother stood, making their way through the kitchen and to the open door. In the doorway stood Sylvia's father, his arms loaded with various bags. Thanks, he said with relief. Were you shopping all afternoon? Sylvia asked, eyeballing the bags. Most of them were from high-end department stores in the city. Not all, he said defensively as he stepped into the house. Just a few hours. What time is it? He asked his wife. Sylvia's mother shrugged. Well, I just got home, so probably close to 5:30. So it's probably close to 5:30. I'll mark that for... Just because of how I said it versus how it's written. 4 hours max, her dad corrected, moving past the woman to the living room, where he set the bags on the couch. Sylvia and her mother both followed him. Is all of this new work clothing for you? Sylvia's mother asked, leaning over to peer into one of the bags. Yes, he answered. Did you really need to get a whole new work wardrobe? Sylvia asked. He sighed. Maybe I went a little overboard with this, but I did need almost a completely new wardrobe, yes, he explained. Most of my tuxedos and business jackets were sold earlier this year to help give us a leg up in certain expenses. I want to revamp that. Sylvia kept her eyes on the bag that she was rifling through. Most of the polo shirts inside were blue or white in color, though there was the occasional maroon or emerald-hued shirt as well. She was trying not to imagine what expenses her father was referring to. Besides, he continued, this new job doesn't need most of those anyway. I'm just going to be local, at least for the foreseeable future, so I don't need to impress any clients, international or otherwise. Honestly, Sylvia's mother commented, I'm just glad that you're going to be home more often while you're working. Though, I think I'm going to also miss some nights where I don't have to worry about you hogging the bed. Excuse me, he retorted. I think you're misunderstanding the situation. You're just going to miss the nights where you can't hog the bed, he countered. I never hog the bed, she insisted. Likely story. He shook his head with a little tsk-ing noise. I'm going to highlight that because it's like a click of the tongue. As much as Sylvia was amused by her parents' playful banter, she looked pointedly at her dad and asked, So, Monday's when it starts? Monday is actually tomorrow, so... He turned to give his daughter his full attention and nodded. Yes, he answered. Tomorrow I shall be known as First Name Mulligan, salesman to the rich. Oh, yeah, I kind of have to give him a name. Salesman to the rich and powerful, or at least those interested in television and radio airtime, he added with a wink. Sylvia's mother shook her head and chuckled. I don't think you can fit all of that onto a business card. True, he replied. For those, it'll just say salesman, and then there will be a QR code that links to a website with the rest. Although Sylvia giggled, Sylvia's mother rolled her eyes. Okay, honey. She then looked at her watch and frowned. I've got to start getting ready. Another class tonight? Sylvia asked. Oh, wait. Let's make this not Sunday, because obviously Sylvia's mom is working. So we're going to go Monday, Tuesday. Actually, we're going to go to the 29th. There. Nice middle of the week thing. For those, it'll just say sales. Okay, here we go. Another class tonight? Sylvia asked. She knew her mother's classes were frequent, but there was no week-to-week set schedule, so sometimes she would have a class every night in a week. I think I'm going to cut that part because I never established that. Establishing it this late feels weak. So sometimes she would have class every night in a week, and sometimes she would have it only twice in a week. This week there had been class every night. Sylvia's mother nodded. Yes, we're getting into the final stretch. I'm going to have to double check what I said earlier. I think it said it was a 3-month class. So technically it wouldn't be wrong or too far off. So we're getting as much hands-on experience as we can without a residency or shadowing. Oh, so it's actually tomorrow and Sunday, don't forget. I'm going to be out for 12 hours. But the upside is, after next week, I'll be done, and I'll be able to take my recertification exam. Yeah, see, there we go, with the consistency. But I will change the date, so this is actually Friday. How many days does May have? $31. Okay. Too far. Sylvia and her father looked at each other. Sylvia wore a concerned expression on her face, but her father smiled at her reassuringly, and then looked back to his wife. Almost out of the thick of it, huh? Yeah, she said wearily, making her way toward the bedroom door. Things are moving fast, aren't they? She paused and turned to regard her husband and daughter. Both of you are getting jobs and moving on with your life. I'm about to do the same. Good changes around for everyone. Then she disappeared into the bedroom. Alright. Sylvia. October. Definitely not the 65th, so 15th. Doesn't matter which day of the week that is. Epilogue. Alright. Last chapter, guys. We can get it done in the next 30-ish minutes? I think so. The night air was crisp and chill, especially considering the recent Florida fall weather. Everyone who was out and about that night were all bundled in long sleeves, pants, shoes, and a jacket. Some even wore caps and scarves. Even with the chill in the air, the fall festival turnout was larger than Sylvia could have ever imagined. Granted, the last time Sylvia had been to this festival was when she was in her early teens, and they were taking her grandmother to local events while she visited. This time, however, Sylvia was now in her late teens, and was running one of the booths at the festival. All over the walls of the 4 by 4 foot by 4 foot space. She had her paintings set up in frames. A few of the works... I'd have to... yeah. It's highlighted anyway. I can revamp it and do research and all that. Anyway, a few of the works that she was especially proud of she took to a shop to get prints done and had them laminated in a box in the center of the display. Sounds weird. Laminated in a box. She knew she was a relative novice, and that her art didn't always appeal to everyone. Still, she was proud of her works, and felt that the pricing she set up for them was representative of her unique, although novice, quality and skill. She manned the booth alone, wrapped in a fuzzy pink coat and a matching scarf and hat. Most people stopped by the booth to look at the paintings. Some had nice things to say, some had critiques that, while mostly constructive, a few were only negative expressions that Sylvia tried hard to ignore. Almost no one stuck around long enough to even inquire about the pricing of the paintings, and the few who did mention that the price seemed inflated compared to the quality of the product. A few hours into the fall festival, which ran from 5 until 11 at night, Sylvia was beginning to consider leaving early. She knew that if she left early, she wouldn't get any of her deposit back, but did it matter? She wasn't getting any sales, and she needed at least 3 paintings to be sold to pay off the cost of the booth. Beyond that, hardly anyone was trying to strike up any sort of meaningful discussion. Okay, this kind of contradicts what was said in the last paragraph, so... It seemed like the general population was more interested in homemade jewelry and bee honey than they were of her art. I'm going to actually mark this for revamp. I know these next few lines. And this does depend on whether or not she's in her home city or if she actually went to the downtown area where it would be more populated. Could she blame them? She knew how the people of her town were. They were in the middle of rural Florida, where people tend to care more about cars and football. It's not like they were in some city where people could go and appreciate art on a regular basis. Maybe if she had painted alligators or palm trees or even a rocket, people might be able to relate to her art more. But paintings of cityscapes, a singular rose growing amid a pile of leaves, a horse running through white wheat fields, among others, only got the cursory glance. Yeah, that's going to add it to it too. No, Sylvia decided, it was a bad idea to put up her work here, when she should have known that people would not appreciate it. She should have targeted the art fair instead, but those booths were much pricier, even if she split the cost with her parents. Guess I had to try, she murmured to herself, before turning around and starting to take a painting off of its hook. Is that Vanessa? A familiar voice caught her as she was turned away. Blinking and setting the painting back where it was, Sylvia turned around and saw Thomas looking at one of the prints that Sylvia had set out. Elaborate. What is he wearing? It might be, Sylvia said unsuredly. Okay, I'll highlight it for potential rework. Which one? Thomas took a print and turned it around so Vanessa could see it. It was a brunette-haired princess wearing a purple gown and a golden filigreed crown. She was kneeling at a window, peering into the faraway countryside that began with greens and golds and faded into reds and purples. The room she was in was bare, with no furniture and no decorations to speak of. It wasn't bare because Sylvia forgot to add decorations. There were details of dust piles and spiderwebs serving as natural decor to the room. The room itself was made from rock, and a red hinged hue spilled over almost everything within the room, as if an external light source was sharing its color. The princess, however, was not bathed in the red light. Instead, her body, and elements of the ground, the wall, and the window that were within inches of her proximity remained whatever color they would have been without the light. I like the imagery that I'm trying to convey here. I don't think it's doing well with the words, though. Oh, that one. Sylvia blinked as she saw it, frowning. It was the painting she'd been working on around the time of graduation. I think this needs some more elaboration, too. How many paintings of Vanessa do you have? Thomas asked. Huh? Sylvia blinked and looked up at the young man. She then shook her head. I've made a few throughout the year. Here. She dug through the prints again and pulled out another picture. Again, this was of a brunette princess wearing a purple gown. However, this time the princess was wielding a sword and to prepare charge. That's me, not the verbiage. However, this time the princess was wielding a sword and seemed prepared to charge into battle with a dragon in the distance, who was obscured by brown and gray smoke. Okay, that needs to be revamped. Can I ask you something weird? Thomas said after a moment of looking at the second picture of Vanessa. Sure. She was certain she knew what he was going to ask. Why were there so many pictures of her? Did you have a crush on her? That was not the question that she had expected, though maybe it was tangentially related. She wasn't sure how to answer that. Several moments of blinking and trying to provide an answer, she just shook her head. She hesitated. She didn't like girls, not like that. She preferred boys. Although, to be frank, no one's really captured her romantic interest in the last couple of years. Vanessa came close, but Sylvia never considered her a romantic interest. She was just her good friend, with whom she built a quick and powerful connection with. So why wasn't she able to verbalize that answer to Thomas? In the end, Sylvia just shook her head. "You were never like that," she answered. "Oh." He looked down at the picture still in his hand. "I thought that maybe you and she... Maybe that's why you knew first." Sylvia laughed. "No, I'm just lucky that way, I guess." Alright, so I'm going to actually make a note here. Oop. Wrong button. Add emotions. Maybe. "Let me ask you something," Sylvia asked him. "What?" "Why did you break up with her?" He looked down at the picture of the trapped princess again and shrugged. "I barely remember why. I think there needs to be a she didn't tell you type question here too, so yeah." He looked down at the picture of the trapped princess again and shrugged. "I barely remember why. I know it's for a good reason." "Oh yeah," he blinked as he recalled. "She didn't tell me about her situation right away, so I was upset that she didn't trust me with that information. It was also stupid of her to refuse the treatment too. I think that's what really sealed it for me." Sylvia nodded. "It made me mad too, but it was her choice. Sometimes people make shitty choices." Sylvia's brows lifted as she nodded her agreement. Yeah, they do. I'm not going to defend her decision, but I respected it." Thomas nodded and then set the print back into the pile where he picked it up from. "I don't like it, but I think I can kind of understand it too. That's where I stopped though. No respecting or defending it, just understanding it." "And that's your choice," Sylvia shrugged and put the other print back into the pile. "Damn right it is," he stated. Sylvia noticed that although he had put the picture back down, he was still staring at it. "Can I get your opinion on something?" she asked. "What?" "How's my pricing?" "What?" the young man asked again, lifting his attention away from the print and toward the young woman behind the booth. She almost explained how no one was purchasing anything, and so that is why she asked. But as she ran what she was going to say in her head before she said it, she realized that it might sound like she's trying to guilt trip into making a purchase, and that's not what her goal was. Instead, she said, "This is my first festival. I'm afraid I might have set the prices too high." Thomas looked over the signs for the various items and shrugged. "They look good to me. Is no one buying anything?" Sylvia sighed and shook her head. "Not a single one. But it's fine," she rushed to assure him so that he wouldn't feel pressured. "I realize this probably isn't the right crowd for artwork, so I think I'm just going to close down early and call it a wash." Thomas nodded and then reached down for his wallet. "What are you doing?" Sylvia asked, panic setting in. "I was planning on buying the print later," he explained, nodding toward the trapped princess print. "But if you're going to be closing soon, then I should buy it now." Sylvia blinked. "I mean, if you buy it later, I'll stay open. I didn't mean to put any pressure on you, sorry." I'm gonna rephrase this. Thomas smiled good-naturedly and handed over the $10 bill he pulled out, the price for one print. "Consider this the payment and save the picture for me? I'll swing by later to pick it up." "I can do that," Sylvia smiled and plucked the print from where he had left it. "See you later," he said, giving a wave and walking off toward a new booth. "Later," Sylvia called as he walked away. Immediately, she took the print, set it carefully into a plastic bag, and set a sticky note with the name Thomas scribbled onto it. Then she set it off to the side where she could hand it to him without any issues. She frowned as she was going through the motions. They had something in common besides Vanessa. Why didn't she take the time to ask him about his school, or how his classes with Dr. Demetrius were going? She might have been able to get him to tutor her if she was able to follow along easily. Shaking her head, she sat back down on her stool and continued watching the festival patrons, smiling at the occasional one or two that decided to stop by. Most were friendly, and there were a few with whom she recognized from both high school and college. Although a lot of the teachers only made remarks about how good the paintings looked. Although a lot of the teachers only made remarks about how good the paintings looked, with none actually supporting the young woman through purchase. Ms. Raven, the art teacher, I think I'm gonna elaborate that a little bit, broke that trend when she absolutely gushed over the work and ended up buying one of the paintings. Oh, Twitch viewers, this is your heads up. There's an ad coming in the next 4 or 5 minutes, and now that I'm looking at the clock, we have about 15 minutes left. So, we are wrapping up shortly. Let me take a quick peek-see. Oh yeah, we are almost done. I'll probably finish up here and then wrap it up. And then I'll give, the plans for the next few days / week. Give me 1 sec while I stretch though, guys. Ugh. In her next downtime, I don't like that phrase, Sylvia pulled a small purple baggie from her purse, and from that, she pulled out a protein bar. She was warned that she wouldn't be able to eat a good meal if she was the only person manning the booth, but she still wanted to make sure that this was all done on her own effort. A protein bar would possibly still leave her hungry later, but at least it would sate her for now. Google, don't you know what sate means? Alright, where was I? It was well after she usually ate, and with how hungry she was now, it would at least fill some sort of gap, she hoped. And we'll just highlight everything. Once she was about halfway down with the bar, about 2 bites in, her mother's voice called to her from the other side of the booth's table. I knew you'd be hungry. Mom! Sylvia made sure to correct her posture and covered her food-filled mouth. What are you doing here? Her mother smiled and held up a small brown bag. Like I said, I figured you'd be hungry. I picked something up for you on the way over. You didn't have to, Sylvia said as she stood and accepted the bag from her mother. From here, she could smell the burger and fries. It felt like forever since she had a meal like this. Well, her father stepped into the conversation. We didn't have to, but we wanted to. This is a big night for you. Can't have you passing out from hunger, after all. I don't think people do that just from a night of not eating, Sylvia stated. Actually, it happens a lot more often than you think, her mother commented. Granted, usually they're not healthy, but it still happens. Oh, Sylvia said, then looked down at her bag. Can I eat it now? Eat it whenever you want, her dad said. It's your booth, your rules. Those words sounded great to Sylvia, who took the bag with her to the stool she had just been perched on. Shoving the protein bar into her coat pocket, she opened the bag to the smell of recently cooked French fries and a regular burger. You guys didn't have to come to the festival, she said, taking a few fries into her hand before shoving them into her mouth. It's been a few years since we've been here, so I figured we'd come, her mother explained, casting a quick glance round. Besides, having a family member with a booth is a pretty good incentive to swing by, her father winked. Does that mean you'll buy a painting? Sylvia had no qualms about trying to sweet-talk her father into buying some of her work. He laughed. We get all of the previews already at home. I don't think we need to buy any right now. So, you're telling me once I move out, you'll be buying the paintings? His cheery demeanor immediately dropped. Who says you're moving out? Her mother chuckled and gently tugged on his arm, guiding him away. Come on, let's go see the other booths. Maybe we'll even pick something up for your new office. No, seriously, he started to complain as he was being led away. Were you two talking about moving out? Sylvia just sat on her stool, eating the food her parents got for her as she watched them disappear past the tent walls. Things were looking much brighter than they had earlier in the year for her family. Everyone was where they felt they should be. Even Sylvia was happy being a student in a regular school with only art as a hobby and potential income. I don't like that phrasing. She hated to admit it, but it felt more reasonable this way. Even outside of her family and school, things were looking well. Everything had its ups and downs. There were great moments, and there were awful moments. There were days Sylvia just couldn't move on from what was happening, and days where Sylvia never wanted to sleep lest she forget them. Oof. And there were often days, like today, where she thought it would go exactly as planned, but one event led to another, and eventually would end up with her in a completely different position than she'd originally imagined herself being in. It was usually innocuous, but sometimes it elevated, or even ruined, the day. What would you call today? The day was relatively boring, save for the nerves that led up to the festival. She spent the first half of the afternoon setting up her booth, and the last several hours just watching people and having, mostly, idle conversation with them. She was tempted to close early at one point, but a fortuitous visitor convinced her otherwise. And since then, she had a couple of good strokes of fortune. The only thing she could really complain about right now was the weather. Alright. And that is the end of the story. There's obviously some things that we need to cycle back around. Like, this would be a good point. Like, this epilogue right here would be a good point to point out that she does have her driver's permit. Learner's permit. Probably should also point out that, you know, how she drove to and from. But we also have to also address things like she was making a big painting, and we didn't talk about the big painting here. So we had the driving, was Vanessa afflicted by something else other than cancer? What kind of cancer? We need to establish that. Is my time frame for Sylvia's mom schooling stuff, is that even accurate? There's just a lot. But I think we definitely have a good start for our edits. So we will get to editing when we can. But I do want to let you guys know, tomorrow I will not be streaming. I will not be streaming on Tuesday. Tuesday is a big day for me. Monday I may or may not stream, but I'm probably just going to take the day off and I'm going to focus on content creation. For like videos and like recording videos and things like that for the Grand Blue Fantasy stuff. And beyond that, so with all that in mind, I will probably be back on Wednesday. And because we did get this leg of editing done, the markings, I may or may not celebrate with like a gaming stream, or I might do an editing stream with like stream raiders, so we kind of have a mix of both. But yeah, we'll get to the actual like manual edits, and the first thing we gotta do is decide on a story or on the title name. What I should do is probably find a theme to go throughout the story and like weave that through and have that kind of be the title. For now though, it's still going to be essentially untitled. I need to figure out Vanessa's dad's name. I need to figure out when Vanessa's birthday is, because her age comes up more than Sylvia's does. I need to figure out their classrooms. Those are a few things that I need to figure out before we actually start getting into the manual edits. And then I think what I want to do is I sorted chapters by breaks, but I think I want to keep the days-ish together, or major events together. Oh yeah, and we also have to sneak some more Vanessa chapters in among the Sylvia chapters. I think first, after I get all this stuff cleared out though, I'm gonna move these guys to earlier in the year so we can just make their friendship be a little bit more fuller than just like a few months. Like half a year seems more fulsome than a couple months. Alright, but yeah, that's the plans. And so, if I do stream on Tuesday, or I've decided if I do stream on Monday, which again, probably not, but if I do, it'll probably be just a gaming stream, not an editing stream. And then on Wednesday when I come back, I'll do Stream Raiders and we'll get to the edits. Alright, y'all. For now, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. I've got a few things I want to do, and then I've got dinner duty. So, yeah, I should stop procrastinating and get going. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Milo, I hope you feel better. Milo, I hope you feel better. And I will see y'all on Wednesday. Bye!